Again, I want to acknowledge that we are the traditional, unceded, and English peoples, the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo First Nations. As Member of Parliament for Surrey Centre for the last 7 years, I have seen and heard firsthand communities' concerns with public safety and gun violence. Surrey is a rapidly growing city. More important now than ever, its youth population is growing and expanding, and it has to make decisive change in regards to public safety and gun violence. There's a strong need and desire to prevent gun violence as it continues to threaten safety and well-being of communities across Canada and in cities like Surrey. Public safety and gun violence prevention means supporting those that are most vulnerable to our community. Our homeless population, youth, women, and others will benefit the most from a greater expansion in public safety laws. Beyond that, innocent bystanders continue to get caught in the crossfires of gun violence. Right here in Surrey, Paul Bennett, who was shot in his own driveway in 2018, or Christopher Mohan, who was shot in 2007 as an innocent person in a hallway. Victims of domestic abuse also suffer from the same effects of gun violence, like Maple Battaglia, shot only a few meters from here in 2011 in response to ending a relationship. We cannot continue to wait to protect these people. Expansion of public safety is our priority. As we continue to face threats from those looking to harm our communities, this announcement could not have come at a greater moment. Canadians deserve better, and we will continue to pave the way for a brighter future. I look forward to today's announcement and how it will make a real difference for Canadians. And I'd now like to introduce the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who will make the announcement today. Thank you.
Thank you, Randeep. It's great to be here with you, with Marco, Taleb, Suk, Parm, Wilson. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional, unceded and shared territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo First Nations. I also want to take a moment to congratulate David Eby on becoming the leader of the BC New Democratic Party and the next Premier of British Columbia. I look forward to working with him to make life more affordable and build a better future for everyone in the province. I'm looking forward to continuing the great work that I've been able to do with Premier Horgan over the past years. John has been a solid friend and an extraordinary leader through uncertain times here in BC, but I can tell you that his impact, his influence, and his leadership has stretched right across the country. John will be sorely missed as I wish him all the best in his next challenges, but I know that we'll be very much looking forward to working with David as the months and years unfold in the future. It is great to be back home in BC. I got to spend some time with Canadians yesterday, people in British Columbia yesterday, including a number of women's groups, to talk about how people are challenged with the cost of living. We know prices are going up. We know grocery bills, and rent, and gas prices are squeezing them in so many different ways, which is why we've stepped up as a government with targeted support that's going to help millions upon millions of Canadians. It's great news that this week we passed the GST credit. That means we're doubling the credit for 6 months in checks that are going to be arriving in the coming weeks to 11 million households across this country. It'll make a real difference in the rising cost of living for so many Canadians. We're also busy moving forward in the House of Commons with legislation that's going to make dental care accessible for all kids under 12, with up to $1,300 in support over the next 2 years for families who can't afford dental for their young kids. And we're moving forward with direct support for low-income renters. It'll hit about 2 million people, almost 2 million people, with a $500 top-up that will really, again, make a difference with the rising cost of living. On sait que les gens font face à des énormes défis au niveau du coût de la vie. C'est pour ça que notre gouvernement est là pour aider avec le coût de la vie, avec un crédit de la TPS qui va arriver dans les semaines à venir dans 11 millions de ménages, avec de l'aide pour les soins dentaires pour les enfants à travers le pays, avec de l'aide pour les locataires à faible revenu. We were pleased the Conservative Party actually supported our measures on GST credits for 11 million households. They changed their initial objection to what we proposed and supported it, which is a good thing. But we now need them to stop blocking the dental and rental supports that we're putting out, because far too many Canadians need extra support, and political parties need to work together to be there for Canadians. We're here today to talk about what we're doing to keep our communities safe. As we see gun violence continue to rise in our cities, and unfortunately Surrey and the Lower Mainland are no exception, we have an obligation to take action. Today we're joined by families and advocates, people who've been at the forefront of the fight for tougher gun control for years. People like Eileen Mohan, who lost her son to a stray bullet when he was only 22, 16 years ago this week. Thank you for all your leadership and your courage. When people are being killed, when people are being hurt, responsible leadership requires us to act. Recently, again, we've seen too many examples of horrific tragedies involving firearms. Il y a 2 ans, notre gouvernement a interdit 1500 modèles d'armes d'assaut, comme le Ruger Mini 14 utilisé à Polytechnique et le AR-15. On a aussi élargi la vérification des antécédents pour empêcher que les armes à feu tombent dans les mauvaises mains. In May, our government introduced measures to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. Today, our national freeze on handguns is coming into force. From today forward, it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer a handgun in Canada. We have frozen the market for handguns in this country, and our ban on imports that took effect in August remains in place. This is one of the strongest actions we've taken on gun violence in a generation. Aujourd'hui, le gel national des armes de poing entre en vigueur. C'est maintenant illégal d'acheter, de vendre ou de transférer une arme de poing au Canada. On gèle le marché pour diminuer le nombre d'armes de poing au pays. C'est une des mesures les plus fortes qui ont été prises pour augmenter le contrôle des armes à feu depuis une génération. Our goal, over time, is to see the amount of handguns in our communities reduced. Let me share with you some statistics to illustrate why this is so important. The number of handguns in Canada has increased by 70% since 2010. Since 2011, firearms-related homicides have gone up nearly 40%, and handguns were the most commonly used weapon. 1 of every 3 girls and women killed by an abuser is murdered with a gun. The presence of a handgun in a home increases the likelihood of self-harm or suicide. Keeping each other safe from gun violence means keeping women, children, and families safe, and it prevents self-harm. That's why we're taking actions today, so that what happened to the loved ones of Eileen and so many others never happens again. Of course, freezing handgun ownership is not the only thing we're doing to prevent gun violence. Before 2015, the previous Conservative government cut nearly $1 billion from law enforcement agencies. But this is not our vision for safer communities. Our Liberal government is reinforcing our borders and giving law enforcement the tools and resources they need to stop illegal gun smuggling. This includes major investments to address gun violence and keep guns out of the hands of gangs and criminals. With this funding, the CBSA can deploy new technology like scanners that can X-ray an entire truck in a matter of minutes. The work we've been doing over the past years is working. Last year, we interdicted nearly twice the amount of illegal guns coming across our border as we had the year before, and we're not stopping that work. On top of that, we're moving forward to increase maximum criminal penalties for gun-related crimes. As of 2 years ago, it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or use assault weapons in Canada, and we're implementing a mandatory buyback. We'll continue working together with provinces, territories, Indigenous communities, and municipalities to build safer communities free from firearm violence. On va continuer d'écouter les conseils des médecins, des experts, des policiers qui voient les conséquences de la violence armée bien trop souvent. Et on va continuer d'être là pour les familles et ceux qui demandent qu'on en fasse plus pour protéger nos communautés. Again, I want to thank the advocates, those who are here today and those out across the country. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your perseverance. For too many of you, loss and grief is at the heart of what brings you here today. And we are deeply grateful that you continue to stand for a better Canada. We thank you for all those efforts to build a safer future for all our kids, for all our communities. Before I pass it to Marco, I want to highlight that I know you had the opportunity to visit the Burnaby detachment, the RCMP, this morning. Our hearts go out to the family of Constable Shaylin Yang, and of course that means her family, but also her larger family of RCMP, of police and peace officers across the province and across the country who stand with her. We continue to remain pledged to doing everything we can to ensure that our communities are safer, to make sure that people suffering from mental health and those mental health challenges and distress, and those who are on the front lines to help them and serve them are able to get the support and resources they need. Merci tout le monde. Je suis content de passer la parole à Marco Mendicino. Marco.
Merci, Premier Ministre. Bonjour tout le monde, and thank you to Randeep and our entire caucus in Surrey and in the Greater Vancouver area for the stellar leadership that you are showing, not only on public safety but on affordability and a wide range of issues. I want to thank you as well, Eileen, for being here, and I'll come to you in a moment. But before I move to the substance of the announcement, which the Prime Minister, of course, covered, I do want to take a moment to express, on behalf of the Prime Minister and our government, our profound sympathies to Shaylin Yang, the constable who worked in the Burnaby detachment, who sadly lost her life. In speaking with the team, I was struck by her dedication and her passion not only to keeping our communities safe, but to mental health issues. Prior to becoming a Mountie, she was an advocate, and then was recruited to work on the front lines. And the other thing that I learned from her team this morning was that she was a warrior. And it's quite clear to me from the way in which they imparted the events of that Noah's here, to her partner, Simone, to all of the family of the policing community here in Burnaby and across the country. Our hearts go out to you, and we will continue to do whatever we can. And indeed, this has been a difficult time for the law enforcement community. Yesterday, in my home province of Ontario, I was present at the funeral of the two fallen police officers in South Simcoe, to Constables Northrup and Russell. We heard similar stories, in both cases from their colleagues. Constable Northrup had finished his shift that night before he went out into the community, and he took that call voluntarily. And Constable Russell had 33 years on in service, and he could have retired 3 years ago. And this is the uncommon dedication that we see across the country. The women and men who put on the uniform, who put on the badge, who are trying to keep our community safe, who are prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice every day that I'm thinking about today. I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about the families like Eileen. And the last time we were here was in the spring, and I remember, Eileen, it was around May 31st, which was Christopher's birthday, and today we're here in and around the anniversary of his death. And even though those are two difficult bookends to a life that was tragically cut short by gun violence, it is his memory, it is you that inspires us to do the work that we are doing today. It is all of the advocates, I wish that everybody could see, but they're all here, from municipal leadership to local grassroots organizations like SAFE and Options. I cannot thank you enough. As the Prime Minister said, it is because of your perseverance through that tragedy and through that loss that we are able to do the work that we are doing today, which of course includes the national handgun freeze. And the Prime Minister has outlined the highlights, but just to underline it, going forward today, it will be illegal to buy, sell, transfer, or bequeath handguns. This is a significant stride forward towards a smart, sensible gun policy to keep our communities safe. Why are we taking this decision? Because we've seen gun crime go up. We've seen handgun crime go up. 45 to 55,000 new registrations on average for the last decade, while at the same time seeing handguns overtake and become the #1 type of gun used in homicides. C'est inacceptable. Ça, c'est la raison qu'il faut gérer sur un dossier qui touche tout le monde. N'importe où les Canadiennes et les Canadiennes vivent, dans des communautés urbaines comme ici, à Surrey, ou même dans des communautés rurales. I want to say that the step that we are taking today is part of a broader agenda to reduce gun violence. And one of the unique features of our government is we don't believe in just picking one lane when it comes to solving this complex problem. You need smart laws, you need sensible laws, which is why even as we move forward with this provision today, we're going to work with all parliamentarians to pass Bill C-21 into law. We've got to get that law passed as quickly as possible. It will not only reinforce the national handgun freeze, it will give law enforcement the additional tools that they need to tackle organized crime, hardened criminals who are terrorizing our communities through gun trafficking, whether at our borders or domestically, by raising maximum sentences against those who pose the greatest risk to our communities, by giving police additional surveillance powers to bust up the organized criminal networks that are trafficking guns across borders. We need to pass that law. We need to make sure that we make good on our commitment to implement the buyback program on a national ban for assault-style rifles, because those guns have no place in any community. They were designed for one purpose, and that is to kill people using maximum lethal force in the shortest period of time. And with the partnership of our many, many stakeholders, including provinces and territories, we're going to get that done. And finally, we need to stop gun crime from occurring in the first instance. And I'm so proud of the leadership, Prime Minister, you have shown, our government has shown, in launching the Building Safer Communities Fund, which is a program designed to partner with the people who are in this room, who know where the risks are, who know when young people meet that fork in the road, how we can empower them to have that sense of belonging, of confidence to make the right choices. And we're going to roll out that fund even more quickly than we have in the past. And it's only by doing these three things together that we can truly eradicate gun violence once and for all. And we owe it. We owe it to everybody. We owe it to the victims and families who've been touched, whether you're talking about Portapique and Truro and Nova Scotia, les familles des survivants de la tragédie au Québec, de la Polytechnique ou la mosque à la ville du Québec. In my hometown, the families and the survivors from the Toronto Danforth shooting, or right here in British Columbia with Eileen, so that there isn't another tragedy like that again. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Now I'm getting a little friendly advice, as I always do, from the Prime Minister, and I'm going to introduce Eileen, please.
October 19th marked the 16th anniversary of my son, Christopher, who was stolen from the doorsteps of my home. And during the trial of Christopher, I presented a victim impact statement, and I said, our forefathers should have first invented life before we invented death. And whenever I had an opportunity to do a rally and advocacy in my son's memory, I always said an elected official's first and foremost priority is public safety and security. And never in my lifetime I thought that I would see a day like this that would come about, that we will choose life over death. And this freeze will impact our future society. Choosing life, it takes a political will and a political courage to make it happen. It is not a popular law, a freeze. It has not made some people happy, but leaders are not chosen to make people happy. They are there to lead and to act for the future generation. And today, the Liberal government has chosen life over death. And I want to thank the Prime Minister and his leadership of choosing life and not taking into effect of the setbacks that this will bring. I think people in the future will bring about and talk about this aspect and this day that we chose life over death for our future generation. And I want to say that a huge thank you to the Prime Minister and to the Liberal government for bringing this legislation forward, that if tomorrow I die, I know that my son's life did not go in, his death did not go in vain. And I am rejoicing that in my lifetime I am seeing this day that we are choosing life over death. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I want to thank her for her advocacy, Minister Mendocino and the Prime Minister. In the 7 years that we've had government and I've been involved with youth violence and gun violence, I've never seen a very proactive, a very engaged cabinet as those that are behind me. I think the Prime Minister, Minister Mendocino, has come and met stakeholders, victims, advocates, law enforcement on every single time, and every ask that the community has asked, they've delivered on, from bringing a forensic lab, a state-of-the-art lab to help solve crimes, to beefing up security at our borders and our ports, to bringing very tough gun legislation that, as Eileen said, for some people is not very popular, but I think most Canadians feel that it's the right time to take assault rifles and handguns off. So I really want to thank, on behalf of the members of Parliament from Surrey and Lower Mainland, all the listening and advocacy and then actual results that this government has been doing. So now I think Cecily will take over and take questions. And once again, thank you on behalf of all of us here in Surrey and the Lower Mainland. Cecily, over to you.
Thanks. So we'll now have time for questions from reporters, and on a maintenant du temps pour prendre des questions des journalistes. For starting with CP.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions from my colleagues in Ottawa. Firstly, they've heard that the opposition parties, including the Bloc and the NDP, will vote in committee to water down the federal handgun freeze by exempting thousands of recreational shooting club members across the country. Will your government let this happen?
I know how much Quebecers are preoccupied with the rise in gun violence, so it would surprise me if the Bloc were to actually water down these provisions. I know how much progressive Canadians from coast to coast to coast are expecting this government and this Parliament to move forward on strong measures like the ban on assault weapons we brought in 2 years ago, and this freeze on handguns that means it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer handguns anywhere in this country as of today. So it would surprise me greatly for progressive parties like the NDP to stand in the way of strengthening gun legislation and keeping communities safe.
Français?
Je pense que tout le monde sait à quel point les Québécois s'attendent à ce qu'on continue de renforcer le contrôle des armes à feu. Je sais que le Bloc est très conscient de ce que les Québécois demandent. Et je sais que les Canadiens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays progressistes veulent avoir plus de contrôle des armes à feu. Alors ça me surprendrait énormément que le NPD choisisse d'affaiblir le contrôle des armes à feu qu'on est en train de proposer. Depuis 2 ans, il est maintenant illégal d'acheter, de vendre ou d'utiliser des armes d'assaut. Et à partir d'aujourd'hui, on ne peut plus acheter, vendre ou transférer des armes de poing. Ça me surprendrait énormément que des partis progressistes essayent d'affaiblir ces mesures-là.
Next question, go ahead.
In the recordings released yesterday between Commissioner Lucky and the Nova Scotia RCMP, the Commissioner confirmed that she was responding to a request from a minister about firearms and stressed that your government was in the middle of trying to get firearms legislation going. What can you say to assure Canadians that this wasn't a sign the government was meddling in a police investigation?
In the days and weeks following the horrific massacre in Portapique, a killing that left communities reeling, families grieving, and Canadians from coast to coast to coast shocked. Canadians and those families wanted answers. We wanted to make sure that those families got as many answers as they could as quickly as possible, which is part of why we launched the public inquiry that's going on right now. But every step of the way, we recognized and supported the fact that the RCMP and police of jurisdiction are the ones who decide what is released and when. They make decisions about how to balance the need of the public to get answers and the need to protect the integrity of investigations. And as we saw in this case, it was the police that months later